reached out and touched the sky, felt the
What makes a business a business?
I'd fly. It was hard.
It's definitely not when it starts. It's more like who starts it. The person behind the idea, the dream. It's not the circumstances of a world that woke up on the wrong side of the bed that year, that decade. It's the man, the woman, the everyday entrepreneur ready to put themselves out there. And when they mean business, they mean business. We're all sailing against the wind right now, but we will make it to shore. It's been done before, and we will do it again.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is your Wednesday afternoon therapy session here live from the Origin Studios right here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm so excited to have you with us this week. We have some very cool things to talk about. I actually have a surprise guest. So I'm super excited that you've joined us this week for another broadcast. This is going to be all about technology and innovation. All about it. So tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We're going to welcome some repeat guest visitors to the site. Make sure everything is broadcasted correctly here. Looks like we are live streaming from LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook pages. Those of you who are joining us again, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We can reach out. This is a labor of love. I absolutely love it. So let me know that you can hear us okay. You can see everything on the screen before we get rocking and rolling here. While we're doing that, I do want to thank our sponsor for this week. This is Recession. This is what we're using for our podcast. We are live. I'm excited to have you on board another week. So I'll put a link in the description in the show notes as well, so you can grab a copy of that as well. Check that out. We are live here. I can't recommend it enough for the some cool features. We're actually testing some new features we've done this week. Doing other broadcast using some scheduled features. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much. Tuning in from Israel again this week, so he's excited for another show. I'm excited to have him back for that. Hopefully we're not going crazy again when we lock down on next week. So tell us in the comments too if where you want to from and whether or not you were back there locked on those who think of this COVID situation. We're getting ready here in the state of Ohio. We're starting Robert says, contact on the aircraft. Thanks for letting me know. Anybody else that's getting weird plans, let me know.
How's this, Robert? Can you hear me a little bit better? Let me know in the comments too. So looks like it had switched my microphone. So I'm actually was talking out of my Mac microphone. So thanks for letting me know that. That's the beauty of live streaming. You only get one take. So thanks for letting me know. So hopefully this sounds a little bit better. So let me know in the comments that you can hear me a little bit better and that it doesn't sound like what Robert say. He said it sounds like I'm in an aircraft with engines on. So, yeah, that's the fan going inside my Mac. So, all right. I got a few viewers saying, yeah, that's a little bit better. So, thank you so much for letting me know that, Robert. That's all this tech stuff. Gotta love it. So thanks again for joining us. Robert, you're joining us again from the UK. So, thank you so much. Huge shout out to you. So, he said, yes, we are broadcasting. Beth, thank you so much for joining us. Looks like, yeah, Beth is joining us this week. And Robert said, yes, I can hear you much, much better. So Thank you so much. See, I love to get all that tech stuff out of the way because we got all the goodness coming ahead. So thank you so much for letting us know. So thank you, those of you who are just joining us for the very first time and have no idea who I am. I just want to do a quick introduction of who I am. I'm the founder of Orange Nomad. I help hustling entrepreneurs become calm, effective, visionary, unstoppable CEOs. So I help businesses just like us, members of the Fortune 5 million. Not the Fortune 500, we're the Fortune 5 million, we're the small guys, we're the entrepreneurs, we're the underdogs. And I help people build calm companies. That is what I'm all about. But this show is completely different. There's no sales pitch coming at the end. This show is a complete labor of love that I started on April 1st, April Fool's Day. We went live for the first time. So Dean says, yes, he can hear me much better. Thank you. So this live stream is the Do What Is Necessary live stream. This is all about throwing away the hustle, grind, toxic norms that have plagued most industries, and especially most of you watching are probably from the tech industry. But this is all things related to entrepreneurship, technology, work-life alignment, and leadership. It's about doing what is necessary for you, setting your life and your business up that what is necessary for you, because that looks different. That's different from everybody. What works for me may not work for somebody else, and that's okay. That's what we celebrate on this show today. So today we're going to be talking about all things innovation. So I'm going to switch over real quick before we introduce my guest. He's hanging tight in the green room right now, so I'm excited to bring you some hot topic information with our special guest here. Let me move a few windows around. This is an infographic, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. This is a venture capital firm here in Columbus, Loud Capital, and I love them because their logo's orange. So we naturally bonded over a lot of things, but especially entrepreneurship. And they help entrepreneurs, and they've started up some pretty cool startups here in town that are now, growing globally. But they put out this infographic a couple months ago, and I wanted to do a show. But I dug this back up. I found it this week, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be able to talk about those things, because I think right now, as we started 2021 planning over the weekend, I got kind of excited because I recall back to when we went through the last recession, which was 2008, and yes, I've been through quite a few. I've been through the dot-com bust. I've been through the 2001 recession. I've been through the 2008 recession, and been an entrepreneur through all three of those. So I've cut my teeth well on recessions, so I got kind of excited about the opportunity that I think is available despite the dumpster fire that we see on the news every night. So I wanted to point out a couple things here and just do a quick history lesson on recessions. And there's some interesting points that they made in this infographic. There have been 47 recessions since the founding of the United States. 14 alone have come in the last 100 years. And think about that. The U.S. has had 3 recessions since 2000. The dot-com bubble, which I mentioned, September 11th attacks ended at the longest period of economic growth in the 90s. And then some of you may have been business in 2008. So if you've lived through any of these things, and you've either been working for somebody else or been at the front lines of running your own business, put that in the comments, because I'm always curious to see who's been through and who's got some battle scars like the rest of us that have run businesses through some really dark times. And 2008 was pretty bad. So now we got the coronavirus. I don't need to go at length as to what we're seeing right now, but I think this sparks opportunity. And this is what excited me in the next page of their infographic, is what we've seen. Companies that have launched during economic downturns. Walt Disney, during 1929, they're still around. Microsoft, IBM, Apple. So tech gurus have been around for a long time. And then this is the one I really didn't put 2 and 2 together on that. Apple took a major leap forward, and during the 2001 recession, that's when the iPod came out. And I think we could say the rest is history that led to the revolution of iPhone and everything. So now let's talk about the tech. Since most of you that are probably watching the show today are from a tech background, These are a few of the tech companies that you're probably familiar with. And if you look at when they were established, Uber 2009, Slack 2009, Pinterest 2010, Square 2009. At the heart of a recession, they started and became successful companies, and every one of them has gone public since. So I think right now is a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur. And if you have that, if you've been itching to start something, you've started a side hustle and you're really not sure whether to get going, I think there's never been a greater time to bite the bullet, to take that leap of faith, and to start your business. And I'm going to introduce a guest right now. We're going to talk about the tech side of things. We're going to talk about tech because I'm a geek at heart. So that's where my love, my passion still lies, is helping tech entrepreneurs. So Paysox, he's been in there. He's been in it since 2000. He survived the 3. So Paysox, you'll be real familiar with our next guest. So help me welcome to the show Matt Solomon. He is the VP of Business Development for Kaseya. So we want to welcome him to the show. Yeah, I love those new sound effects, all that cool stuff.
I appreciate that.
You even got your own welcoming committee. So
exactly.
So Matt, thank you so much for being on the show today. So let's talk about that. Just to let those of you who don't know who Matt is, Matt, just do a quick introduction of who you are, where you've been, and kind of where you've been in those during those recession times in the past.
Sure. Yeah, and actually, you were showing Disney as an example. I thought that you think about and it's really not luck. I mean, obviously they knew it was coming not in terms of COVID, but with Disney Plus. Yep. You look at Disney, the theme parks are basically closed, and the stock because of Disney Plus is basically its highest it's ever been. It's really just unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah.
But so for those who don't know me, again, Matt Solomon, I kind of earned my stripes in the channel, at least with ID Agent. I was the first employee with them and helped them grow from really 0 partners to 3,300 partners worldwide in about 35 different countries. And in through acquisition with Kaseya. And then I've been tasked with taking on a larger business development role, really with all of the different acquisitions Kaseya has with Rapid Fire Tools, IT Glue, ID Agent, Unitrends, MSP. I mean, the list keeps going. They've acquired a lot of companies. Graphis is another one. But thinking back, I guess, to the recession times, 2008, I was in legal sales at the time in New York. And yeah, I mean, everything came to a screeching halt pretty quickly. But yeah, you find different ways and you got to be creative, right? I mean, I've always been in sales and marketing, and so I started coming up with different digital things that people weren't doing, and kind of created my own swim lane back then. And a lot, I think, and I'm sure we'll get into what MSPs and what vendors in this channel are having to do right now, because it is a massive shift.
Yep.
Right. From the physical to the remote.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And I think that's, really, that's where that opportunity that I see for 2021 coming, that I'm kind of getting excited about, is the things that we're going to be able to do internally, where things that may have been, not necessarily acceptable a year or so ago about how we do business are now acceptable. So let's talk about, a little bit, where have you seen the pivots inside the tech industry, and specifically your clients, your partners, and how they've pivoted their business this year? Sure. And kind of where you see things going in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, from the vendor side first, this, at least in the MSP side of things, this industry is run by events, physical events. With ID Agent, we were doing 100 events a year. And so how do you then, overnight, basically went from 100 events to 0 physical events. So one of the things I kind of recognized early on, probably 2 weeks into COVID-19, I was like, oh my God, every vendor is coming out with webinars. This is going to get really boring really quickly. And so what I shifted gears was to bring in thought leadership that maybe MSPs haven't seen before. We brought in sales and marketing people we've brought in people like yourself. I mean, you're in the MSP industry, but just giving other people a voice and creating events around that that are just different. So one of the events we did was called Pivot to Grow, and it was like legitimately we had probably 10 speakers, 7 of them an MSP would never have heard from at any industry event. We kind of really went big and teamed with about 12 different vendors and brought in Magic Johnson as a thought leader. So I was just trying to come up with all these different things to bring something completely different because I saw what was happening. Like vendors were doing 1 or 2 day events virtual, which pretty much has died. That doesn't exist almost anymore because it's a big commitment to ask of the people. So that's one of the things we honed in. Shifting to thought leadership was a key thing that we talked about.
And I think, this platform right here with doing LinkedIn Live, I think is not going anywhere. And looks like you brought a fan club with you too. So, Paysock said, man, he's, so that's cool.
I love Paysock. Yeah, he's a great guy.
So from that aspect, that's where I think doing these live broadcasts, and then that's where you and I kind of LinkedIn is kind of one of those platforms. It's the Wild West right now with being able to broadcast on LinkedIn. So I think, it's a huge opportunity, and I see that growing and, going forward into 2021 is doing live events where, it's kind of that FOMO, your fear missing out if you miss that live event. So, but yeah, it's interesting that we've even seen some pivots and some growth even inside the tools that we're using. I mentioned Restream at the top of the hour. Ecamm is the other broadcasting tool that we use. Everybody's trying to scramble and hustle to add all of these features that were on their roadmap. They weren't prepared for everybody to completely pivot over to a virtual environment. So I think, in one way it makes it makes you stand out more. That's why I think, right now is a great time when everybody's closing business. You've got the chance to get PR and be recognized if you're starting a business. And especially when you rely on people that have been through it. I think that's key, is having a group of people or a peer group that you belong to that can help get you through that. And that's what I love, the fact you guys are doing much differently than most vendors are doing right now. Is pulling everybody together. Entrepreneurs unite. I love that theme. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the, I guess, things I try to do is I feel like we're all in it together. So like, let's learn together. I mean, me and you share messages from time to time. Like, it's just like we're asking each other's advice on something because we are in the Wild West and things are changing rapidly. And how it you would engage with a customer obviously is completely different. Speaking with your vendors, I think, is important because chances are we've already made the mistake. We've already learned a lot of lessons because we're constantly having to put events on. So we've kind of seen what works, what doesn't work. But a lot of times we're just trying to regurgitate what we're hearing from our customers so that, again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just make it your own. And we're seeing incredible things. I mean, we have partners that are doing, chambers of commerce events that are having more success in a virtual environment than they would have ever had in a physical environment. A chamber is dying for content, and the beauty of like a chamber is they promote it for you.
Yeah.
That like joint venture opportunities where you bring in, we had an MSP do an event with one of their law firm clients, and the law firm client brought their clients to the webinar. Nice. So it was an opportunity for that MSP to speak to a whole different audience. They didn't really even have to do the promotion.
Yeah.
So it's thinking a little bit outside the box on how you do business.
Yeah, we did that a ton. That was really my bread and butter, was our in-person lunch and learn events. And yes, you can completely take this virtual. You see people are already having success with it. So I think from a promotional aspect, if you're a tech company, any company really, is that's what you said. Look for the people that are starving for content, for especially anything that is member based, because we did a lot with the apartment association. So they ran an association for property management companies, and that was their hardest thing, was keeping relevant content in front of their members. So, and right now, I mean, tech's not going away. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're starting to see lockdown number 2 or, quasi lockdowns in other parts of the world where, this virtual environment's not going anywhere anytime soon. I've seen more and more events that have already called it for 2021. They're going to stay virtual. So yeah, it's definitely not going anywhere. So any other things that you see inside, your client base that people are doing a little bit different? I think that's one of them, doing live video. So if you're not into live video, I think upping your game was definitely worth the marketing dollars. So we're probably going to do a workshop in December because I just have so many people asking me how we do this show, and we've been documenting and process whole time. I think we gave some metrics to some of the Kaseya folks when we did some training with you guys. I mean, I'm seeing 5 to 10 times the engagement on this show versus anything else we're doing, and we're producing less content.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's huge. So if you're just joining the show, let us know where you're tuning in from. It looks like we've got quite a few more that have joined us since the top of the hour. But let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you have a question for Matt, put that in the comments too. We'll make this some live Q&A. But I think from a tech perspective, where do you see kind of technology and the tech stack? What do you guys have anything coming down the roadmap with some of the products that you guys have that MSPs or other tech companies might be able to benefit in 2021?
From Kaseya just acquired Graphis, which is anti-phishing, which is very timely. Of course, we didn't know what the world was going to come to, but what we've seen is a 600% increase in phishing attacks since COVID. I mean, it's unbelievable, the shift that these hackers, these hacking organizations can do when it comes to security, and they're very nimble organizations. So they take advantage of COVID, and they're doing phishing exercises that are related to the government funds, the workplace policies, and so that's one thing and we're going to be announcing a couple other acquisitions coming down. I think there'll be an acquisition announcement maybe in January. But I think one of the most interesting things I've seen from a Kaseya report, sure, not a surprise that there was, 8 times as many remote requests when COVID first hit. But I thought the most interesting one was that they were MSPs specifically were seeing double the amount of security questions, essentially. So it's I don't know if it's the first time, but your clients are now asking you about security. I just thought that was such an interesting thing. And if you're a technology company out there and you've been talking to your customers about multi-factor authentication for the last couple of years, well, now is I don't know how you don't get that implemented now, right? With that remote environment, there's so many more endpoints that they're having to deal with that are personal, and you got kids logging into the same network through their schools. There's a huge risk in this remote environment.
Yeah, and I think you touched on that too. I interviewed Corey Munson a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the things he and I were talking about. That dynamic right there of parents having to do tech support or grandparents. I'm interviewing somebody that was on his broadcast. She's a tech company in the Midwest, and she set up a Genius Bar inside of her company specifically for parents and, more importantly, grandparents that are watching kids and taking care of kids that are doing online school now. Grandma's got to do tech support. Grandma doesn't know the first thing of how to make sure that the kids are secure and do all of that stuff. So, he and I talked about some interesting things that I think would be neat to do on live broadcast or recorded videos was, showing people how to set up their router at home. Just thinking outside the box where that was one of the things I gravitated out of the home market as an MSP, but I don't think that there's a choice now. I think given the fact that so many companies will not be returning employees back to the office, that home environment is here to stay. And that's not going anywhere.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, and it comes with a lot of different challenges, not just security, but just how do you measure the productivity of remote employees? I think early on, people were like blown away about how productive people were being. Um, I don't know if that's still the case. Like, I think we're settled in. From the reports I've read, productivity has gone down. There's also the emotional stress that people are dealing with, and so as this is one of the hard things. And I'm not an owner of a business, but I can imagine, like, as an owner of a business, like, you're having to think about the emotional levels that your employees are dealing with on a completely different level than you've ever had to before, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, I think, being 8, 9 months into this, that now we're starting to see the mental toll that it's taking on people, and, working parents trying to, again, schools are going to be going back into lockdown. I mean, or it's, work from home.
Yep.
It's just all of those things that they have to deal with. So I think, again, it's another unique education aspect. I just, we're going to be having more and more people like that on this show, because I think it's a problem that, not just MSP, every company has that problem. What you talked about, how to hire remotely. That's
Right.
a new thing where you're not, sitting across the desk from somebody. How do you hire? And then, like you said, how do you take care of those employees, the mental state,
Right.
the productivity, without being, big boss, big eye in the sky?
Yeah, and I think you're really good at doing this, Anders, and I think a lot of people can learn from this. It's like, when you're trying to come up with different creative ways to bring an audience in, it doesn't always have to be primarily about your service offering, right? So if
Yep.
you were an IT company out there listening, we just talked about the fact that emotional stress is going to be a huge issue that every company is going to deal with. So bring in an expert to talk about that to your audience, and you will attract people who may not have come to you for, I obviously speak in MSP tools a lot. So maybe they weren't normally coming to an MSP webinar, but maybe you got them in because of that. It's more top of the funnel without a question,
Yep.
but you need more swings. You need more at bats, basically,
Right.
right? Like, when I did the Magic Johnson event, that was very top of funnel. Like, we didn't talk about ID Agent's products at all, essentially. But I can tell you, we closed the biggest ID Agent deal in our history from somebody who attended that event.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
and I
know,
think, that's you touched on that right now. I think that has been the popularity of this show, and that's what it excites me the most. That I don't, I did, some sponsors are now wanting to get in top of, what we're doing here. Restream reached out to me because of what we're doing here, and there's no sales pitch at all in any of this. And that's what we're talking about. We bring on, the fact that the problems that you have, same problems your customers have. They're small business owners just like you. So yeah, it's filling those gaps. And I found that when we ran an MSP, when we did lunch and learns, those were the topics that resonated the most with people, and they had nothing to do with tech. And you touch on too. That was probably our most popular lunch and learn, is when we attorneys were our kind of our other vertical market. We brought in an attorney to speak on the legal ramifications of bring your own device. So I did the first half, and on the technology perspective of it, and then he talked about the legality of it. And there were things that I learned in that, and it was just you look out in the audience and everybody's jaws drop, because it's things that they had not thought about, and it's ways where, we got him 5 clients out of that lunch and learn. So how valuable do you think I was to them after that? So yeah, you touch on it. A lot of times it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your company. When people see that you're bringing value, they may not need your service right now. But when they do, and it is when they do, you want to be the first person they think of, and this is how you do it. This is how you differentiate, doing things like this. So
yeah, one thing I was starting to think about is, like, the one thing I love about people who are good at sales is you sell through education ultimately. Look, I understand, like, your thought leadership sometimes can be a slower sales cycle, but there might be quicker ways. But ultimately, if you're thinking 6 months, 8 months out, like, really planning this, thought leadership has to be part of that plan, I believe. You think about, like, how me and you connected, and we did a training program within the Kaseya MSP universe, which gives you access to more MSPs, which then more people watch your show, and
Yep.
that's the thing that other owners can be doing. One thing I learned back in I guess is when I was selling in the legal industry. If you reach out to your local newspapers and your local news affiliates, you'd be surprised
Mm.
how easy it is if you are, you call yourself a subject. I mean, you want to really be a subject matter expert, but if you proactively reach out, how often you can actually get booked on those local news stations and get articles written. Because I can tell you, and I have my own LinkedIn thing that we're doing, and Dan and I are going to start actually doing one on a more weekly basis. But as a quote unquote producer of a show, I literally put out a thing saying, are there any MSPs that would like to participate in our panels? Because trust me, it's less work if you come to me.
Yep.
And it's no different than a TV producer.
Yep.
If you make it easier for them to know who you are, chances are, you'll be one of the people they speak to potentially. So I think you got to be always thinking about that thought leadership opportunity as well.
Yeah, because we did that when I ran my MSP. We actually got, the Columbus Business First. I didn't have the money to put in an ad in that, especially when we were starting out. But I had connected to one of the reporters through LinkedIn, and she saw that I posted about a lunch and learn. So she emailed me about it, say, hey, what's this all about? So I got a write-up beforehand. She actually came to the event. I sent her a VIP invitation. She came to the event and then did another write-up afterwards. So I got on the paper absolutely free from a LinkedIn connection. And so, yeah, it's just being innovative with the things that you're doing inside. And that's where I think, the impetus of this show is doing what's necessary for you and to stop following what everybody else is doing, because it may not be what you want. It may not work for you. But I think it's just looking outside the box, perhaps looking outside your industry. That was the true innovation that I gained from a marketing perspective running my MSP. Came from my wife's photography industry. I went to a couple of trade shows in the photography industry, and lo and behold, there's our onboarding welcoming kit. Those where those ideas came from, and being in peer groups outside of the IT industry, it helped me see the IT industry from somebody else's eyes that wasn't writing me a check, and you'd be surprised how people really feel. So, yeah. But it's valuable data, and it allowed us to change the way we did business. And I still hear that today. Is right now one of the biggest pain points that I still hear from the tech industry is response time, is the ability to know that somebody's handling the problem. And that to me, I think is one of those innovative things that if an MSP can figure that part out to solve that problem, that I think it's wide open for market share, because that problem still exists even with all this technology. That problem still exists. So I think that's a point of innovation. For me, if I'm looking at that, how do I fix that problem? And I watched the thing on Netflix and how they basically put Blockbuster out of business. I watched that documentary a couple weeks ago, and that was the number one pain point that people had with Blockbuster was late fees.
Yep.
Netflix built their business around solving that problem, and they ate Blockbuster's lunch, and even Blockbuster tried to make a run at pivoting to the digital and through the mail, but they lost just because that message, that methodology, that user base that Netflix had created of solving that problem was too much for Blockbuster to overcome. So I think, and I see some IT companies doing that is taking that problem and making that the basis of their offering. I think, like electric.ai, I think they're also a Kaseya partner as well. But you go to their website, that was the interesting thing to me, is that is their marketing message that they solve. they solve that problem. You can get tech support through Slack. You know,
Right.
that's how they sell that. But it's not so much the technology. It's not so much what the underlying tech stack is. They're
Yeah.
solving. That's what they pitch. They solve that problem. And so what do you think?
Yeah.
How do you think that will change?
No, I think that's it's a really interesting approach because I mean, and you could do that in any industry, right? You could look at a report from an industry, look at the number one objection that's in that industry, and do exactly what you said, like market. You know, obviously you have to back it up. And I think any company that lacks, I guess, response time it's probably going to be your number one killer in terms of losing clients. And that's on the vendor side, that's on the MSP side, or really probably any company, really, right? I mean, that's what I see. Like when I see people post online about complaints about companies, it's just, a lot of times it's lack of response is a key theme. I think even back to kind of taking that same methodology, and maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but ID Agent is a security company, but very early on we realized that the biggest pain point for MSPs is sales and marketing. And so we developed a prospecting tool, and we developed, Dan, who you know really well, developed an incredible sales enablement program. And so we tried to overcome those two objections, and 30-40% of my presentation revolved around sales and marketing, not security.
Yep.
So it's kind of a similar methodology of what you were just talking about.
Yeah, and I think there are others. That to me is what I continue to hear. Even in COVID, I think that has been the number one reason that people lose business is because they weren't able to respond quick enough. And again, I get the fact that was overwhelming. 2008, we did not see the switch like we saw with COVID. I mean, this was immediate within a couple days, and I'll be honest, I wouldn't want to be an MSP in that situation. So right. I was glad I was out of the game during the first few weeks of this thing because, but I talked to a lot of some MSPs that were well prepared for this, and that's where we were going 6 years ago when I sold. It was work from anywhere. We were selling that and delivering that, and now our biggest challenge was getting people to accept that model. Mm-hmm. Is that even now in this environment, people feel like, oh, I still have to have a server at the office. I still have to have infrastructure. I still have to have an office. But now everybody's rethinking that, especially we go into the next lockdown. People are going to be rethinking everything. So again, I think it's a good time if you're going to start a business and you have the ability to solve the number one problem in an industry. Right now is the time because you talked about it. PR is the easiest thing to get. Because if somebody catches on that you solve a problem and are able to deliver on it, you're going to be able to get the free publicity you want out of it. Joint ventures are going to be easier to get. So I think a lot of things get easier in this environment, even though it's a tough environment. So I don't want to welcome Matt or Eric Steffi to the program from right here in Columbus. So thank you, Eric, for showing back up. So,
one of the things I was going to add, you brought up the point of some MSPs were very well prepared and a lot weren't. And, there's a lot of less mature MSPs and some that maybe weren't ever really MSPs, but were calling themselves MSPs at the time. And the truth really, rose, I guess, to the top during those first couple months. And so, I've seen all kinds of debates with MSPs about marketing and sales and whether they should be making that investment right now. And of course, it's easy for me to say I would be making that investment because think about it. If you can solve that problem, there are so many companies out there that one had to stick with their MSP even if it wasn't going well during that time because they had no choice.
Yep.
But now that we're about to potentially go through a whole nother thing, maybe they're not ready to go that's through that again with that particular MSP. So again, getting back to marketing yourself, putting yourself out as a thought leader, it's such an important time because there is a lot of opportunity to take business away from another MSP. And I know that's people don't love like saying it like at that, but it's the truth that there's just going to be a lot of unhappy customers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, we hear that again, that to me is another game changing, market strategy, if you will, right now is we saw that in 2008 too. That the people that were dissatisfied, as soon as they came out and started spending again, we started to see that kind of domino effect that people were calling us. So I think that's again one of those things that excites me. I think we will see a lot of that in the tech industry in Q1. We've already started to see it. I think we will see that escalate even more in Q1. So you touched on it right there. You got to be in front of them when they're ready to make that decision. So I think, that was a mistake that I made up to 2008 running my company. Is I relied on referrals. I relied on, great, hey, we landed a customer, didn't really have to try. I think that's been the case a lot up to this point. And that's when I started to really look at sales and marketing and changed the mindset of what we did as a company. I went from a tech company that just talked about the tech all the time to a sales and marketing company doing things like this, trying to be creative with what we were doing, and be different than what everybody else was doing. And again, it still to this day blows my mind with like events. Yes, they're a lot of work, but I did not run an event as an MSP where we did not get a customer out of it.
Yeah.
And so where do you see, kind of anything else you see as far as service delivery, any, those types of things that you're hearing people are possibly switching? Because I know the MSP concept has been around for a while. We went full bore in 2004 as an MSP all the way through 2014 before I sold. But I'm hearing rumblings of just different delivery models, different ways of kind of positioning yourself in 2021. Are you hearing any differences of some creative ways people are doing that?
In terms of positioning their services?
Yeah.
Maybe not specific to that. I think, not to harp too much on thought leadership, but I do think that one thing that's been really interesting to hear some of our partners talk about is that, Andrew, if you have an MSP listening to you here, you're starting to build trust with them, and you're not even talking about services that you do. But when you come to the table, when they're ready to work on one of your LinkedIn programs that you do, price is not going to be the conversation anymore, most likely, right? Because you've kind of overcome that with the fact that you've become an authority in their life, because they've been listening to you and they trust you. So I think that's one thing that with thought leadership that I think is really important, is that because MSPs are always struggling with pricing, right? They always say but they can get this here for cheaper. But that's why I do think it's so critical being out in front of audiences like this, because if you make yourself the authority, I think price, finds its way out a little bit. The other interesting thing, and this is slightly self-serving, so I'll admit that, but what we do find, I can say, is that we do see people consolidating under a lot of our offerings because there's a synergy with workflow integrations. There's a cost, we're solving what we call for the space between, right? It's like, don't log into 50 different applications. You can log in single sign-on to all the Kaseya product offerings, for example. Same thing with, what Dan was doing with the sales and marketing, is we're putting it all under one umbrella. So that's been a trend on the vendor technology side, is that we have seen people consolidating more than ever before under a single vendor. Just to try to eliminate some of that noise so that they can be, more efficient, essentially.
Yeah, and that's I struggle with that. Like the first from 2004 to 2006 is the tools, the tech stack, trying to figure all that stuff out, and that's the early days of RMM tools, remote monitoring tools, and just testing, trying to figure everybody out. But I think now it's the maturity of the market. Now we're just talking consolidation of vendors. I think next couple of years we're really seeing that right now. Is there's only going to be 2 or 3 main vendors in the IT space. But you touched on consolidation, and that's one of the things that I think is an interesting dynamic right now in a lot of MSPs that I talked to this year. that was one of the things that caught up with me was just the health side of it, of running a tech company full tilt for 10 years. So that's one of it, just the physical side, the mental grind now. Do you see where do you see some of the consolidation even in the IT space at the MSP level? Do you see that accelerating into 2021? And if you do, what would your recommendations be to an MSP?
I mean, are you talking in terms of potentially for like acquisition?
Kind of both, because I'm seeing some interesting things there, either on the acquisition, but more on the partnership side.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for the partnership side is one to leverage your partners. Because actually, I was reading a report, and it actually, I guess to my surprise, I guess a common theme was that the MSPs in this report said that they felt like the vendors were disappearing in terms of like helping. I guess it was more related to prospecting and marketing. I can't say, I mean, I can speak from my side, and I can speak from a couple of vendors that I know. All we're trying to do right now is help support our MSPs. And so I would encourage MSPs to be reaching out to their vendors. You probably don't even realize how many resources are available potentially.
Yeah.
I guess before COVID, I encouraged MSPs, and of course it depends on the size of the organization, that you need to have somebody in your organization kind of be a vendor manager. Like they need to be, aware of all the things that we're doing. I mean, I can tell you, for instance, we have something called Goal Assist where we will jump on webinars as a subject matter expert. So if you're an MSP out there listening and you're a Kaseya customer, you should be reaching out to us because we can help you support the event. I mean, Dan has literally playbooks on how to run lunch and learns virtually. Like we've actually done all the work, at least the planning part of it on the back end for you. So we've gotten you 80% of the way. So I think it is critically important to reach out to the vendors right now.
Yeah. And, the vendor side, and then I think it's also, that's one of the things I would like to see that was a challenge for me when I had my tech company is nobody really wanted to share like other MSPs. And, I had a conversation too. I got a show coming up that we're going to talk specifically about that is kind of the internal groundswell that we're seeing inside the MSP industry to share, to consolidate, to collaborate, because we have the ability to change the narrative of how technology is viewed and how decisions get made. And right now, again, that's one of the things that excites me if I'm in that industry right now is you have a different seat at the table than you did a year ago with CEOs, with business owners. The conversation can be dramatically shifted your way because they have no choice but to rely on a tech company to be able to move them forward and to keep their doors open. So I think it's, it frustrated me that I could see in attorneys, you sit in depositions where attorneys could sit across on the table with each other and be yelling and screaming at each other. And then as soon as it's over, they go have lunch. But it's like, I wish there was more sharing and knowledge sharing about the industry from an MSP side. Because, I would go to events and nobody really wanted to share anything because they're afraid you're going to take my customers. But I think we need to get over that. And I think there needs to be much more collaboration internally in the MSP industry. So, I may be reaching out to you for some ideas on that too from at the vendor level, but I think that kind of collaboration needs to come from the MSPs themselves with the support of the vendors.
And I think you do see some of it, Rob, obviously in these peer groups, right? Like these various peer groups. I mean, you got True Peer with Gary Pika and things like that, where usually your peer group is geographically across the globe, and it doesn't affect you, I guess, if you share some of those things. So I feel like we're seeing an improvement in those areas of people being willing to share. But I also think we need to hear from, I think you mentioned it even earlier, we need to hear from the owners of these small businesses. I think they need a voice in our channel, and that's something I'm trying to figure out is how do we get them, because what's their incentive I'm still trying to figure that out. Is like, how do I get them to participate on a panel so that MSPs can hear them talk, kind of an open forum. I don't know what their incentive is to join me for a panel, but that's something I've thought about for a while. And now I guess I'm off the road, I have an opportunity, but maybe I'll reach out to you and figure out how we can get those guys on these panels, because I think it's important that we hear directly from them.
Yeah, and you touched on the point. I just had a call yesterday, and again, this came through a LinkedIn connection about EOS or traction implementation. They do data-based hiring, and I got into talking about kind of the technology frustrations that she's having, in her business because of this pivot, what she's had to do. So yeah, I think I would gladly be, a facilitator in that, but I think that is super important. She told me a few things that, again, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. And, I thought about, again, going back to 2008, what did I do in 2008 that allowed us to thrive after that? And that's you touched on it. I looked desperately for peer groups, and really there weren't many in the MSP industry, but I belonged to several just open entrepreneurial communities where I learned things from somebody who's trying to start up a restaurant that you just learn challenges that they have. They're able to take things that you've learned in implementing and starting up businesses. And it was a unique environment. And that's what I'm hoping to recreate. And we're getting ready to launch a platform to allow us to do that, to bring in entrepreneurs from other industries, not just the tech industry, because I think that to me is where we spark the fire of innovation, is when you learn what other people feel about your industry and vice versa. Because it was an interesting, thing that attorneys and, they have, again, the same common problems that we do as business owners, not just tech companies. It doesn't matter what business you're in, but you would not know that unless you're sitting in a conversation having, a non-sales conversation. I think that to me is the dynamic where you really learn the true nuts and bolts of how people's companies run and what their true frustrations are. I learned more being in those peer groups than I ever did sitting in a sales environment, in a sales conversation with somebody, because it's just different. So Paysock agrees with you there too. So yeah, again, you brought your fan club with you, so.
Yeah, the one, me and Paysock. But I also think, I know this is like sales 101, but I think it's something people forget easily, especially if you've been really getting referrals for consistently, the last couple of years. Are you engaging in areas where your customer or your future customers, your prospects, where are they hanging out? So I can tell you, like, from the MSP industry, like, do I want to be in Facebook talking to a bunch of MSPs? Not necessarily, because it's crossover between your personal life and your work life, but that's where they are. They're in these Facebook groups and these Facebook forums talking about various things in the industry. So I need to be part of that. And it's no different than, and it could be different for whatever your industry is, but you got to go where they are. And a lot of times you're really just a fly on the wall looking at what people are saying, because it's a treasure trove of information. Yeah. Of what's bothering them, right? It could be product specific, or it could be industry things that they're dealing with that I didn't know that they were dealing with, and now I can speak to it in my thought leadership presentations. Yeah. Then I sound smarter, right? I know what's happening.
We all need help there, man.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I get a lot of ideas from different MSPs and what they're saying. They're at the end of the day, they're the ones running their businesses. So,
right. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's to me, it's super exciting right now, and especially as people are trying to plan out 2021. This is when you start. This is when you start laying the groundwork, because don't wait till quarter one. That was always the thing that again, going back, I look at my old habits running an MSP, that we would always be, fourth quarter was always my best time. We did so much of our business in that fourth quarter. The problem that I had was, come January, when we got caught up on everything, then I'm sitting there trying to figure out, okay, and now I got to start sales and marketing to try to get new customers. You got to start that process all over again. And yeah, it's a 6-month process to get your marketing going again. So just think about that. But yeah, just right now, I think, I'm super excited about the challenge that there is in any industry, but especially the tech industry, because tech industry has the ability to, just like 2008, to be able to take this thing and lead and stay there, to stay in the front of the conversation that people are having. And I mean, because let's face it, without tech companies this year, things could be much, much worse. Without the ability of people to put people remote, businesses wouldn't have the ability to even survive, a few days without the ability to do that. So any other, tips, tricks, or advice that you would give to not just tech companies, but I'm going to take that snippet too, because that's what I want to get more entrepreneurs involved in the conversation as to, again, looking at things through their lens as to how do we position ourselves, how do we provide services that people need that we may not be aware of.
Yeah. So I guess one quick thing on just going back to the MSP for a second, and I'll be a little bit more broad. I think and you hit it over the head. They got the stamp of approval from the government as essential employees, essential workforce. I think they need to wear that proudly. And, I think it just further cements them as the expert in the room when they're talking to a small business owner. One other tip is, remember, don't tech talk people to death, because this stuff, they don't. I always say, like, if you truly, an MSP could probably give me a call and pitch it to me, because if I don't understand it, then the small business owner won't understand it, because that's not my background, right? Sales and marketing is really my background. And a lot of these business owners it's not their background either. I think you constantly are having smaller, more intimate virtual settings. Test that out, because, and I guess my point being is that you have to test things out, like, especially in this virtual environment, which actually makes it easier to test things out from a cost perspective, right?
Right.
Not everything's going to hit. I mean, and it's okay to fail at an event. Just learn from it. I can tell you something that, we learned recently, that where we started, doing a poll at the end of a webinar, and we just said, would you like to do a demo of this product, or this product? And we're seeing so much more quicker response, because of that, just a poll at the end. But there was probably 10 webinars in a row where we never did that. But we learned, we talked to other peers of what's working, what's not working. So you can't be afraid to fail in this environment. I mean, Andrew, I'm sure, I don't know. I have LinkedIn posts that I think are going to, like, kill, and they just fall. I mean, it's like nothing. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, but, you just got to put it out there.
Yeah, and I think, and again, you touched, it never has it been easier to do something like this. Is to just turn the camera on and just do it. I mean, I look back at when we started in April, man, I was still trying to figure all this stuff out and trying to, produce it and switch this and do that. And then I was just like, just relax, and it's about the content. And that changed. And it was interesting how many people, I mean, I would get some life stories. I got to tell you, doing this show, I get some life stories of people, where I talk about something on the show that just resonates with them. And, I get a DM after that. And it's just like you learn, and you're able to connect with people at a different level in this environment, even though that it's virtual. And it's hard. I mean, I'm an introvert by nature. So for me, it was kind of uncomfortable, but it has been therapy for me. I was like, okay, I want something to do, and I want to be able to provide good, because I've been through it. I've been through 2008, 2001, the .com. I know what it's like. I know that sucker punch that people took back in March. So I think, doing this in an environment is just, it is easier. It is easier in one sense, because I can do everything from a desk. So Paysock definitely agrees that, IT is the hero this year. So yes, I would beat that drum well into 2021. And that needs to be, your marketing hero or your marketing zero, or your IT hero, IT zero. Um, so again, just brainstorming and thinking about the innovation and think about ways that you can deliver your service better. I mean, I think that is a differentiator too. Because again, it's not about tech stack a lot of times. It's how do you deliver the service. So Robert, he just had to jump off for the night. He enjoyed having you on. So thank Robert for hanging out with us. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things coming up for 2021. So if you're stuck in planning, if you're stuck with ideas, please reach out to myself or Matt. Here's Matt's LinkedIn. Connect with Matt on LinkedIn. And I think that's the thing that excited me the most when I saw you guys pivot, that it was when I started seeing you doing LinkedIn Lives back in the spring. And again, you're talking about things that aren't sales related, not product related. Those are the things that are going to resonate with people the most, because I think it's connecting to people at a human level right now. That will take you much farther than anything else that you do. It's just getting good at having conversations with people. So,
yeah, and consistency is really important. I mean, this, Andrew, like you're doing this, I think every Wednesday at 3.
Try to do this every Wednesday at 3, man. So
yeah. So Dan and I, we with LinkedIn Live, me and him have just been doing it whenever we're free, and we just do it. But we are starting working title, but we're calling it the channel weekly, and we're going to be doing it on Thursdays at 2:00 Eastern time, where we're just going to bring on 2 MSPs every week and just have conversation about what's happening, general conversation, but maybe things that are happening that week in the channel, and see where it goes. I mean, again, testing it out. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the super fun part that has me excited. You can actually test, you can fail, you can do a live broadcast like this and fall flat on your face. The acceptance level is different than it was a year ago. So much a year ago, everybody had to try to hide, working from home. Had to hide the dog and the cat and the fact you're working in sweatpants. Now it's like, okay, who cares? Let's just, as long as we're producing and as long as people are generating results, who cares? So
yeah, truth is the dog could walk behind you, and that's your and it humanizes you, and it's like, oh, I also, and by the way, now that we're on the topic, I actually did get what we're calling it, a COVID puppy, because we got it during COVID.
Nice.
But I know there's thousands, probably millions of people who've gotten dogs during this period, and so that could spark a conversation, and you just never know where these conversations go once it gets personal and things like that. So
yeah, and I can tell you how many conversations started around these headphones, and I can't even get them anymore. But yes, it's those little things that start conversations that you would have never had in a real world environment, I don't think. And I think, again, the acceptance level of, messing up, the tech side of things is fine. So
Andrew, actually, I have a question for you, and again, this is to my point, like, if you're an owner out there, maybe keep asking people who've done this stuff before. So before this broadcast, you did a 2-minute intro. Yep. So I've gone back and forth on this thing of a 30-second intro or just going right into it. Do you actually have any stats around that, or are you just kind of going with the 2-minute intro?
It doesn't matter. That's just how long that video was.
Okay.
It's fun. I usually do a comedy clip. Because I like to make people laugh. This was all about therapy and just stopping your workday on a middle of a Wednesday. But yes, it varies. I mean, the thing that kind of resonated the most, I did a clip of Jim Gaffigan I did a couple weeks ago. So, but yeah, it was how many people commented on that. But it starts the show on a different dynamic. But yeah, that varies. But you're talking about the intro video or just the countdown timer itself?
Yeah, the countdown timer, because when I first launched LinkedIn Live, I tried to read some articles, and one of them was said do the intro thing so that you're giving people a chance to get to the broadcast, but on the flip side, it's they come in, it hasn't started, do they just leave anyways? I didn't know if you had any actual stats about whether that was the better way to do it or not.
I went back and forth. and there's a couple reasons I kept it at 2 minutes. I think, LinkedIn, the recommendation from LinkedIn is not to make it more than 2 minutes. What's interesting though is like you go to some of the ones that one of my mentors is Live Streaming Pros, Loria Petrucci.
Mhm.
You look at they have a 10-minute. It's 10 minutes,
I've
and
seen that.
but they're getting thousands of viewers. So I'm like, okay. Again, like you said, just test it out. 2 minutes seems to work because I can actually verify, get everything ready. If you run into any issues, I have time to fix those before we actually are live. That's why I usually start it. And this one I actually scheduled for, I think, 2:55. I think Restream that it wouldn't let you do 2:58.
Okay.
Yeah, it was by 5-minute increments. So again, I'm gonna look at the metrics to see, whether or not the 2:55 worked. But yeah, we seem to find that the metrics are pretty consistent no matter how long length of time that we have the intro. And again, you have the ability to trim that. So I think a lot of our guests come back and watch it later.
Yep.
Robert Givens might be able to speak to that specifically too. But you have the ability, like with LinkedIn Live, I can go back and actually trim the intro down. I try to do that. I edit the video down to like 10 seconds. So if somebody's watching this after the fact, they don't have to sit through a 2-minute timer. It's 10. Yeah, I can trim it to 10 seconds. They can get right into the meat of the program. So, but yeah, if you're watching this after the fact, put that in the comments too. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, where you're from. But again, thanks so much, Matt, for hanging out with me and coming on last minute. I really wasn't expecting anybody to jump on. That was one of the things I was experimenting with yesterday too. Is we put out kind of the intro for today's show, and I tagged a bunch of people because, yeah, you've seen it the last 2 weeks. The LinkedIn algorithm is like got Tourette's or something. But yeah, nothing's making sense right now. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, see if this works. Yeah, things that weren't working before are working now, and things that were working before aren't working now. So again, all an experiment. But thanks for hanging out with me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, everybody, thank Matt. Appreciate you being on the show. I'll get you a cool Team Orange t-shirt coming your way too. So
Awesome.
All right, say hi to the Kaseya crew for me. I'll talk to you later.
All right, will do. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. So thanks for hanging out. That's going to wrap our show this week. I really appreciate you hanging out with us, and Matt for being able to provide some words of wisdom of what he's seeing in the tech industry so that you can apply to your industry. Because this isn't necessarily a tech show. This is an entrepreneurial show. This is about work-life balance. It's about leadership. So if there's one takeaway that you have from the show, please put that in the comments. If you want to bring on, if you have a guest that you would like to see me bring on the show, please put that in the comments or reach out to me. But I really appreciate the fact that we can do this show week in and week out. And I hope that with this show, that the spark of innovation has got started for you. That if you're running a business, we've given you some ideas, some things to think about going into 2021, areas of opportunity that may not have existed prior to the situation that we're in. But time has shown us, history has shown us that even during tough times, you can survive and thrive, and businesses have grown dramatically on the other side of recessions, on the other side of tough times. So there's a lot we can learn, and that's what I wanted this show to be about, is to spark that creative fire in you as you start to plan 2021. And again, if you're put in the position where you're maybe out of work right now, or you've thought about an idea for a business that you've wanted to start, now is the time. Now is the time. Please, if there's anything that I can help you with through this show or through my LinkedIn network or my network in general, please reach out. That's what I want 2021 to be about for me, is helping people start and find their dreams and live the life that they were hoping to have that may have put off till a better time. Right now, there has never been, in my opinion, there's never been a better time to get in business. There's never been a better time to take your business and innovate and find a creative way to innovate. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. So if you could do me a favor and smash the thumbs up button, smash those buttons down at the bottom of the screen wherever you happen to be watching from. But if you could do me one more favor too, please tell a friend, tell your dog, tell your neighbor, tell somebody about this show, because I want to reach a wider audience and be able to help more people. And as you can see, there's no sales pitch on this show. This is 100% dedicated to you. This is my labor of love, and we hope to continue this and do some even more creative things going into next year. So thanks again. I'm humbled that you could hang out with me. This is Andrew Moon, Orange Nomad, coming to you live from the Orange Nomad Studios right here in Columbus, Ohio. Always stay humble, and always, always, always do what is necessary. I'll see you next week.